Okay, this is the second video for operant conditioning. And so we left talking about reinforcements. And so we talked about positive and negative reinforcement. There are other types of reinforcers, primary reinforcers versus secondary reinforcers. A primary reinforcer reinforcement are things that are in and of themselves rewarding without any kind of prior training. So it's something biological, a biological need, something that satisfies a biological need. So food, warmth, safety, water, those kind of things are primary reinforcers. You didn't have to learn that you needed food. Okay, so that is, innate, it's biological. Then everything else is a secondary reinforcer or a conditioned reinforcer. You had to learn its value. So money as a reinforcer, you had to learn that money was worth something. Grades, you had to learn that grades were important or worth something. And so secondary reinforcer or reinforcement is something that you've learned to value through conditioning, through learning. So money, praise, stickers, all those things you had to learn to value. They aren't innate or biological. Secondary reinforcers can often lose their effectiveness. So if you're paid to clean your room, eventually, maybe it's just not worth that amount of money. Or, for grades, if you're paid for grades, maybe you don't want to work that hard for the grades. And so they can lose their value. So that's something you need to know. So primary reinforcer, it aids in survival. So food, shelter, water. Okay. And a secondary reinforcer is something like money that will allow you to buy food, the primary reinforcer. So you can use the secondary reinforcer to get the primary reinforcer. Why do you work a job? Well, you want to get paid so that you can buy your Starbucks and your go to the movies or your iPhone or whatever. So that is a secondary reinforcer. Okay, the next thing, and probably the most complicated thing, is schedules of reinforcement. All right, so you have continuous schedules of reinforcement and partial schedules of reinforcement. Continuous schedules of reinforcement, a continuous schedule is you reinforce every single behavior. Okay, boom, every time you give it a reward. So I'm teaching my dog to sit. Every time my dog sits, I give my dog a treat. That is continuous reinforcement. Okay. Everything else is partial reinforcement. Anytime you don't continuously reinforce, it's going to be a partial reinforcement. So I'm going to reinforce some of the times. I really can't give my dog a treat every single time he behaves, or he'll get super fat. So I'm going to have to use a partial schedule of reinforcement. There's two different kinds of partial schedules. Of course, it gets more complicated. All right, you've got an interval schedule and a ratio schedule. And then when you have intervals and ratios, you have fixed versus variable, so it's going to get more complicated. So we'll talk about those. The reinforcement schedule is just the pattern in which you give the reinforcement, the schedule that you use. When are you going to reinforce the behavior? So again, continuous, you reinforce every time. Every time you put your money in the vending machine, maybe not here at school, I've heard kids say that, you should get some chips or candy or whatever, soda, whatever. All right. And so that is continuous reinforcement. The good thing about continuous reinforcement is that you get quick acquisition. Okay. You acquire the behavior quickly because you're getting a reward every time. Right. But it also has quick extinction because if you don't get the candy or the chips or the soda, then you're going to stop putting your money in. You're not going to keep doing it. So continuous reinforcement is really not going to make you stick with the behaviors, okay? Because once it stops, the behavior stops, all right? It's better to use partial schedules of reinforcement, and that's where you reinforce some of the time, okay? So a slot machine, right? That is sometimes you pull the handle and you win some money, and many times you pull the handle and you don't get anything. With partial reinforcement, acquisition is slower. It's, your acquisition of the behavior is slower, but so is extinction, okay? You don't expect that you're going to get money every time you pull that handle, but you just keep trying, okay? And you'll keep trying because, at some point you think you're going to get the money, all right? So partial reinforcement will give you slower acquisition. You learn the behavior more slowly, but you'll keep it for longer. Those are important things. All right, so with partial reinforcement, you've got 4 kinds. You've got interval reinforcement, fixed or variable, and ratio reinforcement, which is fixed or variable. So let's start with intervals. Intervals are based on the amount of time that passes, all right? Ratio schedules, partial reinforcement schedules based on ratio, are based on the number of responses. I'm not sure what's on the next slide, okay? So let's look at intervals. Intervals is a certain amount of time has to pass before you're reinforced, okay? You can have a fixed interval, and that means you are going to be reinforced on a set amount of time. The best example are paychecks, okay? We know that if you're an employee, I know that every 2 weeks I'm going to get paid, right? So I will keep coming to work because every 2 weeks I will get paid. Other examples of fixed intervals, Taco Tuesday. We know that tacos are cheap on Tuesdays if you go to Tijuana Flats, right? That's going to keep us coming back. Or an annual bonus. If I get an annual bonus, I'm not going to quit in December because I want to get that bonus, assuming you get an end of the year bonus, all right? And so that keeps you coming back. You know exactly when it's going to happen, all right? It's fixed. You know when to expect it, all right? It's on an interval, so it's based on a certain amount of time, all right? Variable intervals are reinforcement after a random amount of time. So you don't know when you're going to get the reinforcement. So you have to keep trying. So pop quizzes are variable intervals. You got to keep studying because you never know when you're going to get that pop quiz. We don't really use them in this class, but maybe you've experienced that in other classes. And then social media likes, okay? If you've seen the social dilemma, they'll hold the likes and all of a sudden you get a whole bunch, but you'll go for a while. So you got to keep checking your Facebook or your Snapchat or whatever you get likes on. You have to keep checking back, okay, to see if you got it, all right? So variable intervals. And then you have ratio. So when you hear ratio, that's a number, okay? Interval is time, ratio is number, and it's the number of responses. So we have fixed ratios. That means you know what the ratio is. Buy 10 smoothies and get one free. After the 10th smoothie, you get a free one, all right? Or if you're working on a bonus system where you get a bonus after you sell 3 cars, then I've got to sell those 3 cars. So when you're going to get the reinforcement and you're working to get that reinforcement. Then you've got the variable ratio, okay? Variable means you don't know, it varies, okay? Ratio means it means a number of responses. So variable ratio, a varied number of responses. So reinforcement comes after an unpredictable number of responses. This is called the gambler schedule. This is the slot machine, okay? So you don't know how many times you have to pull that lever in order to get the reward, okay, to get the jackpot. You don't know how many times you have to buy lottery tickets to get a winner, okay? It's going to vary, right? And we don't know how much it's going to have to vary. It's unpredictable, okay? So playing the slot machines, playing lottery, you get a high rate of response, okay? And it's really low extinction because you're going to keep trying because you think the next one's going to get you that jackpot. So variable ratio keeps you coming back for more. That's a good one to keep the behavior going. Right, and so be sure and watch this video. I can't remember what it says, but I'm not going to show it here. All right. Just keep in mind, operant conditioning uses much of the same terminology as classical conditioning. So hopefully you watched my earlier video or you were here for class where we talked about acquisition, acquiring the behavior, extinction, when the behavior goes away, generalization, being not able to tell between similar stimuli, and discrimination is the ability to be able to tell. Okay, same with spontaneous recovery. Those terms, they apply in both operant and classical conditioning. So if I want a child to increase his bathing behavior, take more baths, and I give him an extra 30 minutes of TV time after he bathes, then I'm reinforcing that bathing behavior with the extra TV time, okay? And he'll start taking his bath when he gets acquisition, when the acquisition will occur, when he starts to see that when he takes a bath, I let him stay up longer, all right? And so it gives him more Cartoon Network or Netflix or whatever it is, all right? If I stop giving the TV time for bathing and he stops seeing that association, then he may stop bathing, and that would be extinction, okay? So it's very similar to what we saw in classical conditioning. All right, this is the PREMAC principle. It's a get a 5 concept. It's only on there once in a while. It's called Grandma's Law. It's the if-then concept. So that's when you make a preferred behavior act as the reinforcement for a non-preferred behavior. So if you eat your veggies, then you can have some dessert. All right, and so the dessert comes as a reinforcement. It's already a reinforcement, it's a reward, but it will get you to do the behavior of eating the veggies, okay? Or in the example before, taking the bath. So if you take a bath, then you get 30 minutes of TV time, okay? So you're making it, a preferred behavior, the reward. So just be aware of PREMAC principle. Again, that's a get a 5 concept. So we like to throw it in there. All right. Another form of reinforcement is token economy. This comes up a lot. You've all had experienced token economy. If your teacher had a treasure box, that's a token economy. So every time the behavior is performed, some kind of token is given, a ticket or stars or whatever, and then you collect enough and you get to go to treasure box. That's a token economy. When you can trade in tokens, tickets, stars, I can't remember the other ones that you guys used when you were little. You trade those in for some kind of prizes. This is used in grade school classrooms mostly. I don't think a lot of high school teachers use it. They use it in prisons and mental institutions. Hero is a token economy. If you get a bunch of, hero points from your teachers, then you're supposed to be able to trade them in for some kind of treat later. So Hero, our Hero system, which I don't know if we're using much this year, is a token economy. Token economy is always on the test. They love that. So be sure you know that. All right, let's hit punishments. Let's see if I can do it in 3 minutes. Like with reinforcement, punishment has positive and negative, all right? Positive means you're adding something unpleasant. A spanking is a positive punishment. And you're like, what? That's not positive. Remember, it's not judgment. Are you adding something? Or are you subtracting something? So with a punishment, it's going to decrease the behavior. So a positive punishment is going to decrease the likelihood of that behavior. So if I spray water at the dog when he barks, or I squirt water on my cat when it jumps on the counter, if I spank my kid because he did something wrong, if somebody gives me a speeding ticket when I was speeding, all right, it's trying to punish me to diminish that behavior. Extra, if your parents give you extra chores because you didn't do the chore you were asked to do, that's adding things, all right? Negative punishments are taking away something that is pleasant. So when they take your cell phone, okay, they take your car keys. I always took my son's cord to his Xbox, so he couldn't play Xbox anymore. Taking away your privileges, those kind of things are negative punishments, okay? You're taking something away, so you're losing something. Punishment will weaken a behavior and make it less likely to occur in the future. The thing about it is that while it works often, it usually is just telling the learner what they're not supposed to do, and it doesn't really show them what they should do. Punishment is most effective when it is immediately after the behavior and it's harsh. So otherwise punishment's not as strong as you would like it to be. All right, what's the difference between a negative reinforcement and a punishment? Punishment is you're introducing negative consequence because you want to weaken the behavior. I'll take your cell phone away. Negative reinforcement, it's a good thing. I'll remove something that annoys you. I'll stop nagging you to do your homework. You just do your homework, and so that will hopefully reinforce that homework behavior. Here's an example. Be sure and go watch it. And then this is going to get you ready for standard 3. So the rest is just videos, and we have survived, and I am out of time. So thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, please let me know.